As long as there have been people on the earth, there have always been troubling times. If it wasn't the first jealousy between Cain and Abel, it was greed or desire for power or vengeance. History books, the Bible, they're filled with it. And yet, as long as there have been people on the earth, there have also been those who would stand up in the face of injustice, in the face of trouble. And one such person was Father Alfred Delp. He was a Jesuit priest and preached against the Nazi ideology. Eventually, of course, this caused him to be imprisoned in a concentration camp. But it didn't stop him from standing up and writing against such things that were going on. And so he wrote an Advent letter in which he said he believed that we all have a choice when we're faced with disaster or hard times. We can either rise up or we can wither away. He believed that we could put things back to where God had started out with them. And so he wrote, "The world today needs people who have been shaken by ultimate calamities and emerged from them with the knowledge and the awareness that those who look to the Lord will still be preserved by God, even if they are hounded from the earth." Of course, he was speaking of Jesus, but his words also speak about that deep-seated human desire to overcome wrong with justice, to overcome evil with good, hate for love. And I think that's why we love epic stories where good triumphs over evil. You know some of those stories, the ancient story of the Odyssey, the more recent stories, the Lord of the Rings, the Star Wars, well, it's more than a trilogy now. But we love to see the bad guys get their comeuppance. And our readings for today, believe it or not, really are good tidings of great joy, though it may not seem like it. John calling us a nest of snakes isn't the best way to get our attention. But these words from the prophets, John really was a prophet too, they're telling us that a good force exists and that there are those who still wield power for good. John and Zephaniah know the creative power of God. They sense how it works. And Zephaniah tells us that God is coming even if we live in darkness. And though he doesn't use the word Messiah, like John might, he shows us that overwhelming love will save the lame, will gather the outcast, and return fortunes to the people. Zephaniah challenges Zion to stop being afraid and to put their hands together to work for each other. And John's lesson isn't much different, and it's actually very practical. When you get past the insults and the harsh language, 3 times he's asked, you can see, "What then shall we do?" And 3 times John answers very simply, "If you have, then share it." But then he goes on to talk about this one who is coming, who'll be carrying a winnowing fork. This fork was used to separate unusable hulls from edible grain when they were crushing the grains. It's as if to say that there are things in each one of us that all contribute to love, to joy, to justice, to peace. But there are also things in us that are very human that burden us or hold us back. And so this winnowing image is better seen through that lens, as a sense that Jesus comes with this winnowing fork. He's going to show you the real you that God has called you to be. Both John and Zephaniah offer the prequel to the coming of Christ. In their words and in the life and the work of Jesus, we find that God here is reclaiming community and calling us back to life. That is God's work throughout all time, reclaiming us, calling us back to life. In our lives, you and I may not be like Father Alfred Delp. We may not feel like we're capable of standing up in the face of terrible evil. But we can follow John's instructions. 3 times, I said before, 3 times John sends people back to their ordinary lives as changed people. So in a sense, John is sending us not necessarily out to change the world. John is just telling us to go and do the good that we have been doing all along. Just do it better. And do it not just once in a while, but in all ways. In all those places that we go. Whether it's at the market, the gas station, the school, walking down the street, seeing a neighbor. Just bringing that little bit of joy or peace or light to someone's life. So in that way, we all take part in this wide, grand, cosmic scheme that God has placed upon all of us for good. So even in the midst of darkness, even in the midst of calamity or trouble, we are always called back to life. And if Advent is to be a special season at all, it can only be special if we can bring that life and light into those ordinary times the rest of the year. So let us go forth, sent by God, by John, by Jesus, to reclaim our lives and be light for one another.